Hey DJ. Hey Bebop King. You guys can hear me now. Lion Still Human, welcome. Waiting for everybody to get in here. I know. Come here, Evie. Come here. This is Evie. Evie, look. Sit. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome, family. Can everyone hear me fine? We've been having some technical difficulties. Screen was freezing and no one could hear me. Can you hear me okay? Everybody out there? Excellent. Sweet. All right. Great. Yay. A lion still human. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke, aka Dragonwise. I'm a cast member here on the Family Nightly Broadcast. This is Evie, my little familiar. Hey, say hi. Say hi. I think I've done a little bit like a background about me. I'm a personal trainer and fitness consultant. I've been doing that for the past 12, almost 13 years now. And so I specialize in transformations. That's what I do. But there's a big part of transformations that occur other than just physical transformations. There are transformations that occur from the inside out. So the topic we're going to talk about tonight is removing the stickiness of labels. And I started to talk about this last week, but we were having so many technical difficulties, people couldn't stay on. It was bouncing all around, so it's kind of weird what's going on with Periscope. Anyway, so why do we have labels? What's the purpose of a label? It's to define something, right? To categorize it. To organize. Yes, exactly. To organize. And to organize it, how? You put it in a specific category, right? And that's what that thing is. That's how it's labeled. And there's a certain description to that label. A label says a lot about something. So when I talk about the stickiness of labels, is we have these labels in life. We get labeled certain things. I mean, you can look at governments and how they label things and how they categorize people into certain things, especially like socioeconomic statuses, right? You have the rich, you have the middle class, and you have the poor. And you're in this status, you're in this label, you've been labeled that way. And when you're labeled that way, when you allow, it's like you've allowed an outside force to dictate who you are. And when we're labeled, when we have a label, it's almost like we have an expectation to meet that label. Even if we don't really buy the label, if we don't really believe it. Just the label sticks, right? And it's really sticky. It's really hard to remove because, oh, well, so-and-so said this about me, so, they're the authority, so to speak. And that's what happens with labels, is you're allowing someone else authority over you to dictate who you are. Like I said, when you label, like something says like fancy shoes, like you put a label on a box, right? Fancy shoes, in that box, we know, just from looking at it, the dimensions of the box, we know what kind of shoes are in there, we know what's in there and what type is in there. And there's this definition that goes on with the label. So are we these things in boxes? Right? Are we limited to just these labels? Exactly. Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm talking about you remove these labels, right? But they're sticky. They're super sticky. They're really sticky labels. You rip them off and it's like they're not tearing off like they should. They're sticking around. There's pieces of them still there. And you get labeled a certain way, and then, like the nerd or the jock, and especially with the younger generation, when it comes to a young developing mind, and they're labeled the athlete by the parents, right? There's a certain expectation that they have to meet to be the athlete, right? Oh, you could have just threw a ball one time really well, and the father's like, oh, he's going to be an athlete. Suddenly there's this huge expectation, there's this label of what they're going to be. Or, he's really good at reading books and he's really smart. He's going to be a nerd, right? Oh, now he's been labeled a nerd. Or maybe just one time someone said, you're such a nerd, or you're a dork, right? We've all heard that kind of things in high school. Someone says that to you, and suddenly they've labeled you. They've put you in a box. They've defined who you are by one word. And you get labeled, and then you feel like, oh, well, maybe I am a nerd. Or maybe I am that way. Maybe I am the fat guy, right? Or maybe I am the jock. But you're not. You're not. You're not supposed to be living up to these expectations, right? These are just labels. They don't have any meaning other than a definition to define you. But who defines you? When you're stuck in this label that someone else has labeled you, and like you said, at work, like you got labeled at work, when you go home, do you still operate under that label? Or is that more the expectation of how you've been labeled at work, and that's what you're going to do, right? Like I was in the Marine Corps, and there was a certain expectation of being a Marine. And whenever I was outside of the Marine Corps, they would always be like, well, you're the Marine. Like they look at you like, well, aren't you supposed to be tough? Aren't you supposed to be this? Aren't you supposed to be that? Like, you're not supposed to be human. Right? It's like all this stuff happened. Well, you're the Marine. Why don't you do something about it? What does that mean? What do you mean do something about it? Like, I'm not allowed to feel? Well, you suck it up, right? Suck it up. It's a label. Luke the Marine, you're a Marine. So you get it. You understand. Semper Fi. You get it. You move around. You're just doing your normal thing and say, well, weren't you a Marine? I can't be a human being. I got to be some sort of fall back on some sort of robotic type of programming to fit into this label now. I can't just have human emotions and I can't just be me, right? I don't have to be Luke the Marine or Luke, my dad's son, right? Because that's a label, right? Well, I have these big expectations for my son, right? Or I have big expectations for my son from your mother. All these things, they're all these labels that are supposed to define you. But can a label really define you? It's good for labeling, categorizing things, inanimate objects that don't have feelings, right? Even if you label an animal and it constantly sees some sort of stimulus put upon it for a certain outcome, it starts to become that. Yeah, we're not inanimate objects. We're very animate objects. This is not a static lifestyle. We're dynamic. We're dynamic beings. And we are in these dynamic communication, these forms of human dynamics through communication. And all of a sudden we got to be labeled as something. We got to be categorized as something. We got to, oh, there's the black guy, right? Well, doesn't he like this? There's those stereotypes that go with that too, right? Well, he's black. Doesn't he like fried chicken? What? I love fried chicken. What does that have to do with anything? I don't get it. I don't understand. Oh, well, you know what they say. You know what they say, right? Like, what do they say? You continue to place these labels on people, and guess what? If they're not aware, they'll just meet the labels. They'll just come up to those labels. But why? What is it that we look for in other people to validate ourselves? Why do we need labels anyway? And what is it in us that label others? There's that quote. Which quote is that? They never see the real bird again. Exactly. Exactly. That's beautiful. I love that. Right. Because now it's been given a label. Right. Why is it that we associate... No, that's perfect. Why is it that we associate green with go and red with stop? Does green really mean go? Does red really mean stop? Right? We see... what is that? Is a hexagon stop sign? Octagon or hexagon? We see that thing and we think stop sign. If it's red, we think, oh, that's a stop sign, right? We see a yellow triangle, oh, that's a yield sign. It doesn't have to say yield on it. We just associate those labels with what those are. But they're not. Green does not mean go. But there's this universal understanding of that's what it is, just because someone decided that that's how we're going to communicate. So that's all well and good for trying to communicate with technology and inanimate objects, but when we're trying to communicate with each other, why do we place judgment on others and label them as something? Has very little to do with that person, because they're not that. It has everything to do with us labeling them, because we have to compartmentalize them in some way. We have to rationalize who they are. We don't understand maybe their culture. We don't maybe understand their personality. And instead of saying, well, just let them be. Let them have their personality. Okay, they're a little socially awkward. Wouldn't you be too if you got labeled? Of course. If you see someone I knew a guy like this, he didn't understand human interaction. And I can relate. I get where he was coming from, because he would be in a room and people would be socializing, right? And they'd be talking back and forth and chit chat, it's all just a lot of, idle chatter stuff going on that doesn't really have any real depth to it, right? It's all about like stuff that people really don't care about. And he would just not engage in those conversations. And someone would say, well, what about, what about this party that we're going to have, right? Would you be interested in coming to that party? And he'd be like, no. And everyone else would be like, well, that was rude. Well, he didn't get it. Why should he play this whole game? Why should he play this whole communication game of being polite and stuff if he really didn't want to do it, right? Why should he try and move around in these parameters of these labels? He didn't get the social interaction. He didn't understand why. He was just like, if you're going to do something, you're going to say something, why are you using all this rhetoric to get what you want? Why don't you just come out and say it? Because then the person won't want to do it because they'll feel manipulated. Then they can actually see that you're manipulating them. He didn't get that. And people label him, say, oh, he's socially awkward. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand people. He doesn't understand how the world works, right? Well, maybe he was the only one who understood how the world works, right? Maybe he's the only one in the room who really was having a genuine conversation. Who's not sitting there going, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. He was just like, I am who I am. Why is that a problem? These labels are meant to define you, but they're not you. It may define a particular experience in your life or a particular time frame, but it doesn't define you, right? At one time you were the athlete, or at one time you were the fat person, right? When you live under these labels and you have that stickiness, you have to come from a place deep inside and far removed from those labels so that you say, oh, okay, someone labeled me this. But I'm not judging them. And I'm not labeling them as someone, oh yeah, well, you know what you are? You're a labeler. You're just someone who labels others. No. There's no point in that. The whole key is to not pass judgment anymore. And to say, okay, so here's this label, right? Someone said I was sensitive. Do I think I'm sensitive? And without psychoanalyzing it, too much and going, sensitive. What is this like crying all the time sensitive, or these varying degrees of sensitive? Instead of saying that, just saying, why would they say that about me? Or someone said I was mean, right? I think I'm nice. I'm nice. I'm nice to people. Why would they say I'm mean? You're no longer passing judgment on them. You're not committing to that label, nor are you judging it. You're just saying, oh, at a particular point in time, someone thought I was being mean. It's the same way that when a child does something bad, oh, you're a bad boy, you're a bad girl. When they do something good, you're a good girl, you're a good boy. But that's not really true, because then you're stating that what they're doing is good or bad, and not necessarily that what they're doing is bad, but they're bad, or because they're doing that thing, they're good. There you have a label. When I was young, and basically what happened was, if I got into trouble, my parents would say, that's a wicked thing to do. You're being naughty, right? You're being bad. And I'm being bad. You're a bad boy. So then I thought, I'm a bad boy. But then there was a conflict when they said, you did something good. You're a good boy. Wait, how can I be bad and good? Like, couldn't I just be good all the time? Right? Or am I bad or am I good? Which is it? No, at a particular point in time, I did something that displeased them, and thus I was labeled bad. Or I did something that pleased them, thus I was labeled good. But am I really good or bad? And what is good and bad, right? We have these whole labels: dark, evil, light, dark, positive, negative. Is that all really necessary? Because when we start to look beyond the labels in life, when something happens and we're no longer labeling ourselves, but we're also not labeling the situation. That was a bad thing that just happened. Was it? What makes it a bad thing? Oh, well, something horrible came out of it. Did it? What makes it bad? If we stop judging what's going on in our lives and we start understanding that these things are occurring because of these labels that we've internalized, and we're seeing these things project throughout our lives as we move forward, you start to get the big picture of why these things are occurring in your life. And when something starts occurring because of those labels, and you would say that's a bad thing, right? Like, oh, so-and-so broke up with me or something like that, right? Well, this is like the 6th time someone's broken up with me, right? The 6th time someone's broken up with you? The 6th time you've been in a relationship that's somewhat the person's manipulative, right? This is the 6th time this has happened, or the 5th time, or whatever. Do you think, how many times does it take before you start to maybe go within and say, I can't be just, meeting all these really crazy people, women or men, that all act this same way. There's got to be something in me. Maybe I might be a factor. Maybe some label in me, outside layer that I've stuck over my heart might be a factor. Might be defining me. So then what normally happens is that event, if you don't learn from it, it gets more and more and more and more intense each relationship or each kind of lesson you go through. And what ends up happening is that last lesson, it has to be painful enough for you to learn from. Hey, welcome back. That last lesson has to be painful enough for you to learn. And when you sit there and go, oh, why does this always happen to me? Or this is such a bad thing, you've labeled it. And now it's got this sticky substance all over you because it was originally labeled within you. But if you sit there and go, why did this occur in my life? What labels have I stuck over my heart? What labels are there that are still sticky? Sticky labels. What labels are still stuck over my heart that's causing unrest, causing a charge? You're getting angry, right? Or you're getting sad, or you're getting intensely emotional in some way. And intense emotion has to deal with those labels, those layers and labels that are stuck. And instead of judging and labeling the situation as good or bad, just simply taking a step back and seeing it for what it is, and then being grateful, and not liking it. You have hate in your heart and you don't like it, that's the first step. Because that hate in that heart, that's not you. That's just labels. That's just labels of people, of things, of emotions. That's you labeling yourself in so many ways when someone else hurts you. Labeling yourself as, well, I have to protect myself. I can't let people in. People have hurt me in so many different ways. You try and rip those labels off, you're not even going to be aware they're there if you judge and label the situation that you're in. I'm not good enough is my label. Welcome to the club, my friend. Welcome to the club. You know, the number one question you have to ask yourself when you say I'm not good enough for who? Because the only person you're saying you're not good enough for is yourself. And that label will bring you all kinds of people that will say you're not good enough, that will treat you like you're not good enough. But I'm telling you right now, from the bottom of my heart, you are good enough. You're here, you're on this planet, you're living, you're breathing. You are that special, you are good enough. All of you. You all belong here. And if here is where you are and you're not happy about it, whatever situation you're in, then you need to be grateful for that, because here is exactly where you're supposed to be, right now, in this moment, with this realization, I'm not these labels. I'm something greater. And I don't have to be defined by these labels. And yeah, I'm going to feel that stickiness when I rip the label off. That's fine. But the more you come into those situations where you start to not label the situation, you're going to be truly grateful for the awareness that you are in that situation, that that label does exist, and that you're simply attracting other things that are attracted to that label. Let's see, where are we at? Oh, we're about 7 minutes over. That's okay, though. This has been great. This has been a lot of fun. We'll continue this later. We're going to talk about titles and entitlement, and that's going to be really fun in this whole course of Dragon Dissension. And I will see you guys next week, the same time, 9 o'clock. Please feel free to tune in every night at 9 p.m. for the Famili nightly broadcasts, all different cast members and all different kinds of great information to share and experience, and just tons of love to share with family. Absolutely tons of love. I am good enough. You're right. You're right. You're right. And thank you for that. That, you know what? If more people walked around and just randomly stopped someone and said, "You're good enough and I appreciate you," it'd blow their minds. People would start having amazing days. Right? Because you all belong here. You all are here for a reason and a purpose. Right here at this very moment. I'm also going through the Chakra Mastery course by F. Serpent, Alex Fairman. That's over on www.famili.link. He has a free course that you can go through. He also has the mastery course as well. I'm going through the mastery course. I love it. I highly recommend it. It's awesome. I do that as part of my morning meditation. If you want to learn a lot about how these energy sources work, it's a really awesome find. So, yep, famili.link. All right, guys. I will see you later. You guys have a great night, and thank you for being you. Bye.